Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show, and it is 115 degrees here in the Valley of the Shadows here in Phoenix, but I'm here at the Art of the Rhythm Section Retreat, Billy Cobham's Rhythm Section Retreat for the second year in a row, and I keep meeting all these cosmic cats along the way, young, middle-aged, and old, and
easy on that, Jake.
what an honor. I mean, no, I mean, and but we're all everyone loves their brother, and Rick Drumm, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Pleasure to be here.
Can you talk a little bit about the late great Ndugu Chancellor, who Dom referenced today in the lunch gathering? He told me in my first interview, he said, "I got tired at a certain point of being a starving genius." When did you reach that point in your career?
When did I reach that point in my career, or when did Ndugu?
No. Ndugu reached it after, like he was playing with Hampton Halls, he was playing jazz gigs, right? But then he was like, there's all this lucrative stuff in the studio, so I have to go into this. So Keltner was the same way. When did you decide not to be a starving genius?
Well, honestly, it's when I had my first child. And I never considered myself a genius, and my wife reminds me daily that I'm not.
He's not?
No, however...
The birth was my daughters have changed my life fundamentally too, so I dig it.
Right, and so it's that reality that slaps you in the face that says, you need to be open to whatever opportunities come down the road. Some opportunities are better than others. And what direction do I want to go in, whether it's in music or something else in the music industry? And now for me, it's not only within the music industry, but outside of the music industry. So what I look at is in my life is, Rick Drumm 1.0 was that my goal was to become a studio drummer. That's what I really wanted to be.
On the East Coast or West Coast?
On any coast that would hire me.
But where were you residing? Where were you at?
I was on the East Coast. I was living in Springfield, West Springfield, Massachusetts.
Home of Joe Morello.
That's
Phil Woods, the Springfield...
Right, which were all guys that my dad used to play with. My dad is a trumpet player. And one of my first drum teachers was a guy by the name of Joe Raish, who was Joe Morello's best man at his wedding. And Joe...
his best man was also a badass drummer, like Morello?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, I guess they all hang together.
Right? And, they came out of the school of, like, Joe Sefcik, who was a teacher in that area, and, of course, George Stone. And Joe Raish used to have... This is when I was a kid. Joe Raish used to have these jam sessions with Morello and Phil Woods, and on bass was Chuck Andrus, who ended up playing with the Woody Herman band of the 60s with Jake Hanna and Nat Pierce. Right, so those were
where was the jam at?
It was at a club
like
in Springfield.
Was there a black side of Springfield, or like a black like a music area?
Well, it wasn't just a black side. Yeah. It was, if you want to refer to it as that, but it was just the music side, and it was everybody coming together. So, like one of the drummers that my dad used to use was a great jazz drummer by the name of Eddie Marshall.
Are you kidding me?
No.
The recorder played the most amazing recorder, played with Toshiko Akiyoshi and Ron McClure in New Haven.
Yeah.
Tell me, Eddie Marshall's been a spirit on this journey.
Yeah, Eddie Marshall was a drummer with my dad, and then went on the road with Horace Silver.
He got a gig with Horace? That's Eddie's first gig was with Horace?
Well, after my father.
So your dad, what was your dad's was he a Duke Ellington cat? Like it's all music?
My dad was all music, and he had a music store.
Can you talk about how deep a bag of music that the tunes and how important it was not to label things back then?
No. My dad played everything, and he went to the New England Conservatory, but he didn't graduate there because he was gigging, right?
A musician was a profession then.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And he had a big band. He started his big band. And what was interesting is that two of the members of his sax section, Joe Lopes and Joe Racasano, ended up being two of the sax players with a group called Super Sax. All right, that was a group that was put together by Med Flory, and Jake Hanna was the drummer with that group going back. But I mean, that was my dad's saxophone section, right? And
but was he into the R&B? Steve Swallow played in New Haven with some of the original blues cats. A lot of the jazzers, Charlie Neville, Train,
right.
Sonny Rollins, they were all R&B cats.
Right. No, my dad wasn't that.
He was a big band jazz.
Big band guy. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like one of the guys in Springfield that I don't know if you ever heard of this guy, but was one of my mentors, was a drummer, and still is a drummer by the name of Billy Arnold, who was one of the original drummers with Junior Walker and the All Stars, and then
wow.
Billy.
This cat's still with us?
He's still with us.
Unreal.
And in better shape than you or me.
Billy said I lost weight, but it's all good. Yeah.
Billy, I mean, he would go from, he went from Junior Walker and the All Stars to playing with Archie Shep, right? So I mean, that's quite a leap, and he's still incredibly vital as a player and as an educator. I mean, so that area of the country was incredibly rich with the tradition, with the music, and with the ability to find people that would mentor you. I mean, I started playing professionally when I was 13 years old. I started playing the clubs when I was 14. And
Chris Parker, you know Chris?
Yeah, I know Chris.
Okay,
yeah.
He's tuning in right now. But
hello, Chris.
Yeah.
What did you draw today?
The most master artist. But he talked about playing the mafia run strip joints up there. Did you play the strip joints?
Yes.
Can you talk about how what's so amazing is that we have electronic music now, right?
Yeah.
But before you had to play, you had to hit the moves of the dancer.
Right.
Can you talk about that and how it really helped you develop an elasticity within your playing?
Well, yeah. I mean, you had to tune in to the moves of the dancer, and you had to learn how to anticipate the moves of the dancer, right? After you did it for a while. And that came into play later on in my career when I became the drummer with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, which I did for 2 years.
Legendary. I mean, we haven't even gotten there yet. but the anticipation part. Go back to talking about anticipating the moves.
Right. It's every human, every animal, when they're getting ready to make a major movement, there are moves that they make right before that. Right, and you learn to key in on those muscle movements, right? And needless to say, when it came to a dancer, I was keyed in, right? But so that we move forward into the world of circus, and you're learning to catch the act from a long distance. And again, you had to pick up on what I call these anticipatory movements, these anticipatory muscle movements.
This is fascinating. So I just want to be clear. Did you ever go on the road? Like, did you ever just go on and live the jazz life?
I went on the road and lived the musician's life, but not necessarily the jazz life.
But I mean, this was predating Barnum and Bailey.
Yeah, I mean, right out of high school. Listen, I had won what you would call a full boat scholarship to, at the time, North Texas State University. And this was 1973, going into that September of 73. Yeah, so September of 73.
Wow.
And I blew it off. Because
you were making more money on the gigs.
Yeah, I was doing a road gig, and I was playing in Chicago and Miami.
Who were you playing with? Bob Brookmeyer? Like who?
No. I was playing like a Vegas show group, right?
So it was show tunes.
It was, yeah. I was doing show tunes and stuff like that with all these people, but then on the off nights I would go out and sit in with all these different people and play a lot of clubs. So like when I was in Chicago, I would go and sit in with a guy named Bill Russo, who had a big band out there, who came out of the Stan Kenton stuff. And so that was a lot of my training ground, you know. And one of the things that I passed over, we haven't talked about, is educationally, after I studied with Joe Raish, I kind of tapped out what I could get from Joe, and he suggested that I go to New York or New Jersey and study with either Joe Morello or Ed Shaughnessy.
Oh, you get the top two right there.
Right. And
Shaughnessy lived near Morello, or they both lived in
well,
Jersey?
Shaughnessy was teaching in Manhattan at Henry Adler's. All right, so Henry Adler's music store was 136 West 46th Street. You would like go down 3 or 4 steps, and you went to Henry Adler's music store. And Henry was also a publisher, and so he was publishing the books for Louis Bellson, Joe Casadas at the time, you know, who was the drummer with Peter Nero back then, and a host of others. And so you went upstairs,
Right.
and on the second floor, this was the lineup going down this hallway, and this is long before the drum schools that we have today. But so on the left-hand side, as you walked in, was a mallet player by the name of Doug Allen, who co-wrote the Phil Krause mallet methodologies. Then you had Ed Shaughnessy studio. Next to Ed was Joe Casadas. Next to Joe Casadas was a guy by the name of Sandy Feldstein. And Sandy wrote the Yamaha music methods and all of that. And Sandy took over the studio from Saul Goodman, who's the guy that Vic first studied with.
Well, yeah, no, that dude, I've seen records with, oh man, this is
And
heavy
then
stuff.
at
This
the
is
end-
really heavy.
At the end of the hallway was Sonny Igo, who was the father of Tommy Igo. All right, so there was one bare light bulb in this hallway, and there was like a chair in the hallway where students would sit and wait for their lessons. You know, so it was kind of like, you know, you were waiting to be interviewed by the KGB, right? And so I would go up and I would take a lesson with Doug Allen and then Ed. And then after my lesson with Ed, I would walk over to NBC with him over at Rockefeller Center up to Studio 6B. And he sat me behind him every other week for 2.5 years. I was at the Tonight Show rehearsal.
Was Bill Takacs on bass?
No, it was Richard Davis.
Are you kidding? My man. I mean, one of my first Richard Davis was on upright bass on the Tonight Show with Shaughnessy.
Yeah.
Oh, this is unreal.
Yeah, so it was Richard Davis on bass, and I was like right behind Ed. In those days, with the way that the Tonight Show was set up, there was a piece of the audience that was right behind the band.
Yeah.
So
the vibe, man.
So I was at the rehearsal, and one of the regular subs in the trumpet section was Clark Terry. So Clark was there, and there was Snooky Young, one of the great jazz trumpet players. And then, of course, in the saxophone section, you had Tommy Newsom, and you had Bucky Pizzarelli on guitar, Ross Tompkins on piano, and, of course, Doc, right? And so, I was this pimple-faced kid.
Right. You were 14 years old?
Yeah, 14, 15 years old, up till 16, and then the Tonight Show moved out west. So, but I was there for these rehearsals, and these guys got used to seeing me. And so they would always ask me, so what's Ed got you working on? And I'll never forget this one conversation I had with Clark, right?
Yeah.
And he said, so tell me about your cymbals. Right? You know, tell me about the sounds of your cymbals and so forth. He said, well, you know, there's like certain frequencies that I don't like when I'm soloing that are really high and bright, and they get in my ears, and they really, you know, he said, he was just saying they bother him, right? And he said, so when you're picking out your cymbals, you want to take that into consideration and get the spread, so you're covering a lot of ground. I mean,
he was telling you the kind of cymbals.
Yeah.
The spread.
Yeah.
It was getting in his ears too much.
Yeah, I mean the brights and stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it was an education on top of the education.
I mean, this is we got people chiming in with questions. I mean, people are having a ball with this right now. But I want you to talk about the drums as an accompanying instrument. Eddie Marshall, if you listen to him play in any setting, he's accompanying
Right.
with the drums. He's not up front with the drums. No. Okay, I want you to talk about the way that got across musically with either pop. I mean, with Shaughnessy, the way he used the top of the kit and the bottom of the kit, because there's an over reliance on the bottom today, where before you were dancing on the top of the kit, people could float over the top of that.
Right. Right.
I just want you to break down how you learned to play melodically on the top of the kit.
I mean, from my dad especially, right? Because of his upbringing and who he had been playing with as he was evolving as a musician. Okay, first of all, time came first, right? But secondly, it was play for the music, right? Don't play for yourself as a musician. Play for the overall greater good of the music. And that's the way that I learned. And so when I was studying with Ed, or I was studying with Sonny Igo, which when the Tonight Show moved out west to LA, I went down to the end of the hall and started studying with Sonny. And Sonny again is Tommy Igo's dad, but Sonny's history was, great. He's a winner of the first Gene Krupa drum contest. Sonny was a staff musician for CBS. He did the Ed Sullivan and Jackie Gleason shows. And there's some stuff that you can find on YouTube. I mean, you could just see the amount of talent and musicality that Sonny brought to the table. And so those were the guys that were my mentors. Those were the guys that kept telling me, play for the music. Play for the music.
They would actually verbally say that to you.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great.
And I remember...
I mean, would they say it after you maybe overplayed, or were they just always, that was just pounding, that mantra would be pounded
Let's
into
just go on the assumption that there was a period in my life where maybe I was overplaying a little. Maybe more than a little.
Right.
So, I mean, I'll tell you, an experience that I had. Remember, I mentioned this guy, Billy Arnold, again, who had
Junior Walker.
Right, Junior Walker. And so Billy was playing in this group on Sundays, and it was a jam session. So this one day, he says, hey, man, come on down, sit in with the guys. And there was this organ player named Hardy and a saxophone player, Juan. And we were playing, I can't remember the tune, but everybody was taking a solo, right? And then Hardy was the last one that was taking the solo, and Hardy's still around, and I will get back at him one of these days.
Yeah,
but
he's with us. You're giving a shout out to him.
He's still with us.
Oh, this is unreal.
So Hardy was the last, and everybody else had left the bandstand. Now it's a drum solo, right? And so I'm playing, and I'm playing, and I'm playing, and then I'm running out of stuff to play because I gave you my whole vocabulary.
Absolutely.
Right? And then
all your ideas.
Now I'm starting to repeat myself, right? And then I'm starting to repeat myself again. And now I'm getting frustrated because it's gone on for like 20 minutes. Literally 20 minutes. It seemed like 3 days, but it was like 20 minutes. And finally, I got so frustrated as a kid. I put down the sticks. I said, anybody want to come up on stage and finish this tune? And then they all came back up and we finished the tunes. And I was so damn angry that I just stormed out of the club. And Billy...
I think you had a right to be pissed off.
Well,
And what was the message? I mean, what's the message?
Well, here was the message, right? So Billy called me up. He said, you mad? I said, damn straight I'm mad. He said, come on over to the house. And I was just fit to be tied. And Billy said, calm down. What did you learn? I said, that these guys just set me up. He said, well, wait a minute now. Is that what they did? I said, yeah. He said, so what did you learn? I said, man, I played everything that I knew. And it still wasn't enough. And so now the lesson was pace, creativity, expand your vocabulary, right? And so there was a lesson inside the lesson.
I'm going to have to get my head wrapped around that, because to me, you had laid it all out there. You left it all on the stage, and they should have come back when they knew you were flailing around.
But apparently it wasn't enough.
I mean, I got a question from an audience member about tell the circus story. You want to riff on the circus story?
I got a bunch of them.
Well, I mean, this is from Father Dominic. Here's okay. I mean, if this has been played out, I'm into creating new history. So I mean, but riff on this for the audience if it's a great.
All right. So I mean, look,
or tell a different circus story.
All right, I'll tell you a different circus story. We were playing Madison Square Garden, and this was 1978. And
the year I was born.
All right. So, thank you for that. So the Rangers.
The hockey team.
Right, New York Rangers hockey team was not having an exceptionally good year up to this point. They go on the road. It's towards the end of the season. It doesn't look like they'll make the playoffs. Circus comes to town. They've taken the ice off the floor at Madison Square Garden, which is on the 5th floor of the Penn Station complex.
Absolutely, been there many times. Yeah.
And the circus goes in. We're doing our shows. We're doing 2-a-days and 3-a-days on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Each show 3 hours a pop. Okay.
4 to 7, and then like 8 to 11.
Well, we were doing we do a matinee.
Yeah.
Like a 1 to 4.
1 to 4.
Right, and then or we do a morning show actually, a 10 to 1. And then
family time.
Yeah, and then we do like a 2 to 5, and then maybe a 7 to 10.
So you're talking 3 gigs a day.
Yeah, we're doing 3-hour shows a day on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in New York. So the Rangers go on the road, unexpectedly get hot, unexpectedly make the playoffs. So now they got to come back in
8th seed
to town, right?
8th seed.
Now they got to put the ice back on the floor. The producers of the show at the time were Irvin and Kenneth Feld, and at the time Mattel owned the show. They didn't want to give up the matinees, so they put the ice back in, they brought the rigging back down, and we're doing our show. So now it's the first show with the ice, and the show was always on these rubber mats that was on top of the concrete. And now the rubber mats are just sitting flat on the ice. And so now it's the opening of the show, and I'm playing what they call a gallop, right? And so, right, I'm playing the fast singles, and then the first thing that comes out are these 3 horse troops, right? One from Romania, Bulgaria, and as soon as they hit the ice, I mean, these riders are standing on the backs of these horses. They're going to do flips as the horses run out. Of course, what happened was the mats frosted over, and it's like 15 of these damn horses and riders. And so there was a horse over there, a rider over there, and as they're going down, I'm going, shada-bing, shada-boom, bing, bang, boom, like it was all part of the act, right? And all of them went down, every single one of them.
But you were playing improv to them.
I'm playing.
You're riffing on that.
I'm catching it, right, as it's happening.
Even it's a train wreck, but it's going.
It's a train wreck, but if it's a train wreck, I can catch it.
That's right. I mean, you held it together.
What's that?
You held it together.
Yeah, and so by the time the three groups of horses went down, then everything slowed down to a snail's pace, and we did the rest of the show. Then we canceled the other matinees.
I just want you to talk about the characters that came before me, guys like Dizzy Gillespie, and Charles Lloyd's still with us, Mingus. Would you consider them shaman characters? Did you like Monk, like those guys? Did you consider them, because of their ability to expand musical vocabulary before your very eyes, were they shamans to you?
Yeah, my first jazz album was a Dizzy album.
Which one?
It was a Manteca, right?
Oh man, the congas, the Candido, or whoever was playing the congas on that.
And I'll tell you a Dizzy story.
Yeah.
Right, so
love Dizzy, man.
Right, so Louis Belson was one of our artists for Remo, and I did a lot of work with Louis. And Louis had sets and we had a set in London, we had a set in LA, a set in New York for whenever he was doing those gigs. And he was retiring a set in London. And so we were having to actually send back. And Louis had promised the set to Dizzy, right? And so our distributor in Europe was taking forever to get the set back to us. And now Dizzy's always calling Louis, hey man, where's my set? Where's my set? Lou, come on. And so it takes months, literally months. And I was invited to a recording session with Dizzy by Billy Higgins. Right? And so
Billy invited you? Billy?
Yeah,
Oh, that's so cool.
So Billy invited me to this session. And he introduces me to Dizzy. He says, Dizzy, this is Rick Drumm. And Dizzy says, Rick Drumm? Rick Drumm? Where the F is my drum set? F you, Rick Drumm. I'm going, Diz, I'm sorry, man. It was my Where's my drum set, man? That was my introduction to Dizzy.
Tell me about, this is important, because you said your 1.0 was to become a studio musician.
Right.
And one of the L's on my show is life, which is overcoming adversity. Can you talk about did you go to LA to be, when did you give that the effort?
Finishing, I did 2 years with Ringling Brothers. My dad was musical conductor with the Blue Unit, right? And so I was drummer with the NORAD band.
Oh, my smoking record. Did you press record? Did you play on record? Because that stuff is ripping.
So
61 just filthy stuff going on NORAD.
Yeah, NORAD, we had, it was a great
Garibaldi loves that stuff too.
Yeah, so I mean, one of my colleagues from that band was a guy by the name of Fred Hamilton, who was the jazz guitar professor at University of North Texas just retired with Ed Sof. He and Ed rode off into the sunset together last year. But it was a great band. And the last year that, as I was starting my last year in the Air Force, actually when I went in the Air Force, my dad ran away with the circus, right? So he became musical conductor of the Blue Unit. As I'm entering my last year, the drummer that he had been using had been doing the gig for 6 years and wanted to get off the road, gave my father a year's notice. My father called me up and asked if I would be interested in doing the gig. I said, oh, yeah, but I mean, I don't get out until February of, what the hell would it be, 78.
Yeah.
And he said, no, he said, well, we're in rehearsals in November. Is there any way that you can get out early? And so as it happened, the Air Force was going through a 10% cutback in the bands program, and I was able to get an early out by 3 months so that I could take this gig with the circus. And so, I did that. I did that for 2 years, and I had my first wife, who was in the band with me. She was a saxophone player. And
really?
Yeah, and then
that's pretty badass.
Could have been, and then.
So go ahead. And when did you actually get to the City of Angels?
We moved out there in 1981, in December of '81, and while I was with the circus, one of the things that happened was I got an endorsement with Ludwig, I had an endorsement with Zildjian, and I also had an endorsement with Remo. And the guy that was the vice president of marketing was a guy by the name of Lloyd McCausland. And Lloyd would send me products to test because I was literally playing 40 hours a week. And so it was a great laboratory to test stuff. And so they sent me a new product. I would test it out, would write up reports, send it back to them with the product. And so when I moved out to LA, I had a newborn daughter.
So this is when the baby was born.
Right.
So basically your daughter, same age as me. Basically.
Right. So the daughter was 6 weeks old.
Wow.
We get out to LA and I need work because, it's a funny thing about infants, they like to eat frequently. And so I went to Remo. I talked to Lloyd, and I got a job, entry level, in their customer service department. Okay?
Wow.
And
Wow.
at that time, we didn't have any money. I didn't have a refrigerator in the apartment. We had a styrofoam ice chest. I was making daily trips over to Ralph's supermarket to get the bags of ice.
Drumm, you're a mensch, dude. I love you, man. But you were just surviving.
Yeah, just trying to figure it out as we went along. And the gig from Remo, they needed somebody. My timing was good, and they gave me a shot. And it was an entry-level customer service gig. I had a little bit of a background in retail because my dad had a music store that I grew up in, and I knew the artist side of it because I had been an artist with Zildjian and Ludwig, and also Remo, and I had this performance background. And so they put me in that customer service seat, and then what happened was totally unexpected. And that is that
magic came in.
Yeah, I just became fascinated with the world of manufacturing, product development, and everything that it took to bring a product that I would be happy in playing to our customers. And if something went wrong, I wanted to know why. And so, and then how did these things happen, and how do things come together? And
what's an example of something going wrong?
Okay, I'll give you a perfect example. At that time, Remo was introducing the pre-tune system, the PTS system, and we had a lot of drum heads that were breaking during shipping.
Interesting.
Right? And so we had Hank Belson, Louis' brother, who worked at the factory, and it was usually the bass drum head that was breaking during shipment. And so Remo said, well, let's get Hank and we'll get him a mallet, a big mallet, and we'll just bang the hell out of these heads. And so Hank is out there in the factory with this big ass mallet, banging the hell out of these heads, and nothing's happening. So one day I go out into the factory and I said, well, okay, let's think about this differently. I'm a UPS driver, and I got this box, and the box weighs about 50, 60 pounds, and I dropped the box. How does the box land? So I grabbed a PTS bass drum head, and I just dropped it on the floor, and it split. Then I grabbed another one, and it split. And I grabbed another one, and it split. And so by thinking about it a little differently,
well, you're just looking at it from a delivery point of view.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's just what's happening in the real world.
But that came from your pedigree coming up with your dad's store. I'm not necessarily packing wise, but just when you were testing all these drums. Mm-hmm. I love the story you told about Clark Terry. Were there other cats that, when you were playing music, that gave you insight into how certain things should have sounded, how cymbals should have sounded? Billy Higgins and Lou Tabakin said it was like playing with water.
Billy. When I was with Remo, I was playing a lot out in L.A.
You were?
Oh yeah.
Playing Dante's?
No, I wasn't playing Dante's, but I was playing just all around the city.
This is mercurial.
Yeah,
This is amazing.
Like one of the guys that I got to know very well was Shelly Mann, along with Billy.
Bless Shelly Mann.
Shelly would come out to the factory. He lived not too far away, and he would come out and hang out, and he would grab a drummer by the name of Tom Miner, who was doing some product development for us, and me, and we'd go back into our testing room, and he just wanted to trade for us. He just wanted to play, right? And
it was all about the music. It was just about serving the music.
Absolutely. And then it was the same with Louis. Louis would come out, and he'd say, "What are you working on?" And I'd show him something. He said, "Write it out for me." So I write the part out, and then he'd come back 2 weeks later and say, "Hey, man, that thing you were working on? Let me show you what I did with it." Right? And so it was this constant interaction with all these great players. Joe Porcaro, Jeff Porcaro, right?
I just saw Joe and Emil play at Bogies in Westlake, and they've been playing together since they were 10 years old.
Oh yeah.
Cooking.
Yeah.
Danny Serafin was there. John Densmore was there. Denny Diaz was there.
It's the Connecticut Mafia, those guys, right? I mean, they came out.
Emil's mom had the first liquor license in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And that's all.
Joe used to play with my dad. Joe? Yeah, Joe was doing the ice shows and things like that back in the day. See, back in that day, there was this circuit where the Boston, Springfield, New Haven,
Portland, Maine,
right?
The whole New England corridor,
right,
yeah.
Right, and so my dad was doing a lot of that contracting. So those were the guys that were doing it before they moved out to Los Angeles or New York.
Before I let you go, this is just part one of my series here. Can you explain why you're thankful or appreciative that why you're here at the Art of the Rhythm section with Billy Cobham?
Well, the reason that I came in is that I'm involved with an organization called the Sessions, that is a nonprofit foundation that was created by Jules Follett. And Jules wrote the book Sticks and Skins, and it's a profile of over 500 drummers. It's a pictorial book on over 500 great drummers. And one of the things that Jules picked up on as she was going out to do these photography sessions is that there were drummers that she thought that, that had these hits, these number one hits.
Right.
And she thought that financially they would be somewhere in the stratosphere, when in reality they were struggling, right? And so she learned that the reason that they were struggling was that they didn't have a good sense of business. They weren't hip necessarily to the legal aspects and contracts of their career. And so in that sense, they were taken advantage of without realizing they were being taken advantage of.
James Gadsden, a dear friend of my program, it comes to mind as far as it relates to
Absolutely.
some of the stuff he did with Charles Wright in the 103rd Street Watts Rhythm section.
Absolutely, right?
His singing, go ahead.
And so after she wrote the book and published it, she didn't want it to stop there. And she was just overwhelmed by these stories of these drummers and wanted to do something about it. So she created the Sessions, and our mission is to enrich and empower musicians to become successful, right? And so we put a panel.
But that term is relative. What is successful in your book?
Well, I don't have a book.
I mean, but let's put, what does that mean?
Well, what that means is that for me, what that means is I am as successful as I desire to be, right? With all aspects of my life. I have my musical life, I have my business life, and I have my family life. Okay, and so, and not necessarily in that order. Okay, but there's, okay, my wife Betsy is off camera at the moment, but honestly, I traveled a lot in my career, and it's great to have Betsy, who really was the glue that kept everything together. Right? And so that was an important part that allowed me to do what I felt was important to do in terms of my music and my business career. Right? And so it's having that support system of people that believe in you. It's surrounding yourselves with people that share your core values, whatever they are.
No, you are blessed. What I'm trying to get at is with the Sessions. Okay, for 7.5 years, 3,500 interviews on the radio. I've been doing it all with all the cats from all different. So what you're doing resonates completely with me. But I'm looking at it from a point of view of saying, when you talk about wanting to create an atmosphere or knowledge base or wisdom based that will allow younger cats to be successful. Talk about exactly how you're doing that
Okay.
in a quantitative way, if you can.
Okay. It starts with a vision. All right. Define your definition of success, whatever that is. Okay. It's different for everybody. My definition of success may not be yours. It may not be any of your listeners, right? However,
Viewers.
But, all right, so define what your definition of success is. All right, now, there's a slogan, right, that says, vision without execution is hallucination.
I feel like I'm there sometimes. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm with you. I love that line, dude. I mean, okay.
I didn't make it up.
Yeah, no, I dig. Yeah.
Right? But what that essentially means is you got to put a game plan together to achieve it. All right, so here's my challenge to everybody that's listening right now. Think out 5 years. What will have had to happen in the next 5 years for you to consider yourself to achieve your vision of success, whatever that is? Whether it's work-life balance, if it's monetarily, if it's a status, whatever the heck it is. What is it? All right. Then, what are those steps that you need to do to achieve that? All right. So we're thinking out 5 years. When I'm working with my clients, let's push them out to 10 years. So somewhere it's 5 to 30 years. If I'm working with a software company, it might be 30 days.
Right.
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 But what's your vision of success, say 5 years out? Now, where do you need to be in 3 years? What's your 3-year picture? What does that look like? All right, so what is your income that you want to make, right? Your net income. What's your infrastructure look like, right? So do you have a band? Are you part of a band? Do you have a production company? What is it? What does it look like? It can be anything. And then define it. And the more that you can define it, the more apt you are to achieve it. Now, okay, that's 3 years out. Where do you want to be at the end of 2019? What's that look like? How much income do you want to make? And then how do you measure success?
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the 3 to 7 goals that you must achieve that's going to drive you towards those numbers?
7 is the max.
7 is max. And everything that we do, less is more. Because if you go beyond that, you're not going to be successful, right? They've got to be really good quality goals. Now, okay, so now we're at a year. So now, what do you need to do? What are the 3 to 7 priorities that you have to achieve in the next 90 days that's going to help drive you towards those annual numbers? All right, so now as musicians, what are those activities that you must achieve in those next 90 days? What's, we say practice with purpose, right? Don't just practice what you like. Practice what you need to practice that's going to drive you towards those goals, whether it's playing your instrument or whether it's building up your business skills, whether it's building up how you network, relationships, so forth, right? I mean, because the playing part of it is important, but it's not necessarily the most important.
Yeah, no,
Right?
I in summation, in closing, what is your message to your musical brothers and sisters about giving back to the younger cats? There's a lot of people out there that, again, they need to survive, but there are cats that are just playing all the time. That's how they make their living.
Right. And
I just want Dom Fumilaro told me in our 4th interview. He said, it's great that's an inspiration. That you're doing a great job, but understand that there's more to be done for my daughters and future generations. And the way Shelly Mann mentored you, and the way Morello's best man, mentor, do you feel like you're filling that void through the sessions?
I do, because I feel like I'm giving back, along with my fellow panel members, real life experiences, and what are those lessons that we learned from those experiences, right? And look, if those lessons fall on deaf ears, there's nothing I can do, right? You're going to have to figure it out on your own.
But in 100 years, it might resonate, and you're cool with that.
If you're open to it,
yeah.
then you will expedite your progress to whatever your vision of success is.
What an honor, Mr. Ham. Such an honor to be part of the program. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Jake.
The Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you all later.